This is the New Writer Podcast. I'm Matt Brotherton, and each week I detail my journey as a storyteller in hopes it encourages other writers struggling to live their dreams. Show notes and videos can be found at newwriterpodcast.com. And now, here's the show. New Writer Podcast, episode 24, weekly update for July 3rd, 2015. This week, I'd like to talk to you about some of the books I recommend on writing and plotting. All of the books on the list are available on the Kindle, and for the purposes of pure disclosure, links to Amazon on the show notes or mentioned in the show are affiliate links. I like money, and I'm not apologizing for that. Before we get into my book picks, I owe you a weekly update. This isn't much to report, but if I don't report it, I'm a sham, and you have every obligation to publicly humiliate me. So writing-wise, I've been doing okay. I've written just shy of 10,000 words this week. Most of that writing has been done for my day job, but I'm currently outlining my next book and doing some free writing character exercises to get ready for it. It's been a while since I wrote anything not related to the Seven Keys saga, so I need to find a new rhythm for the new project. I'll have more details on that as it gets closer to being done, but it's a huge departure for what I've been doing. Sales have been down still too. I did sell 3 books this week for a whopping $4.27. I'm still making money, which is good, and Joyce's is still getting free downloads. So I'm on the right track. I'm definitely not dead in the water. So just know that if you've made more than $4.27 this week, you're doing better than I am. I hit another new milestone in a different way this week when I had someone join my mailing list just long enough to get Fallout for free and then unsubscribe, which is the first time anyone has unsubscribed from my mailing list at all. And so that must mean I'm going places. Anyway, that's my week, and that's my week in writing. So let's talk about reading about writing. I read a lot of books. I actually started reading my 100th book for the year this morning, which is Brothers in Valor by H. Paul Honsinger. One of my personal rules is a minimum of 1 out of every 3 book I read has to be nonfiction. And this is an old rule I've picked up that I'm pretty sure I got from Chuck Wendig. The basic idea is to feed your mind with new ideas. It's a rule I follow. Okay, anyway, at the beginning of the year, I decided to get serious about improving my craft and storytelling abilities. So I figured if I'm going to read at least 50 nonfiction books this year, they might as well be about writing, right? Right? Well, I took that to heart. Because of the 99 books I've read so far this year, 41 have been slotted into my writing shelf on Goodreads. I don't want to say anything disparaging about anyone else's book, especially any I've read this year. I believe you can find hidden gems in any piece of crap, but there are some of these books are definitely better than others. For the most part, all writing craft books have the same information in them. Some just go about having a different way of saying it, but there's only so many different ways you can say, get your ass in a chair and write. But there are a few that stood out to me as being either the best version of that is similar information or something truly unique and important. But ultimately, you probably shouldn't read 41 writing books in a year. There's not that much writing information out there. Without further ado, here's my writing must-read books for 2015. Number 5, Making Tracks, A Writer's Guide to Audiobooks by J. Daniel Sawyer. I've mentioned my love of audiobooks on the show before. I've even announced a little while back that I wanted to get into recording them on my own. One of the reasons I have put that on the back burner, besides the astute observation of a listener that I might be using it as an excuse to not write, was due to this book. I've been doing this podcast for about a year now, and I know I've obviously missed a few months worth of episodes there. And I did another podcast a few years ago before that, and I had this strange assumption in my head that because I knew how to put a podcast together, or I thought I knew how to put a podcast together, I would be able to put together an audiobook. I was wrong. Making Tracks is the second book I've read on audiobook creation, the other being Audiobooks for Indies by Simon Whistler. I definitely also recommend Simon's book for a completely different reason. Audiobooks for Indies is focused mostly on understanding the business of audiobooks as a writer. Making Tracks is focused on the technical side of making audiobooks, also for writers. The technical aspects are different, are there in Simon's book. They're definitely there in Simon's book, but it focuses on the business, whereas the Making Tracks book has the business information, but it focuses on the technical side. So ultimately, if you are serious about getting into audiobooks as a profession, I would read both. It's interesting, and if you're interested in upping your audio game and producing professional quality work, Making Tracks is definitely a book you need to read for all of the technical details. Number 4, Indie Poet Rockstar by Michael Laron. I'm pretty sure I mentioned Indie Poet Rockstar back in April during National Poetry Month, but it deserves to be brought up again. I don't want to rehash anything, only repeat it so that I'll just read the review I left on Goodreads and Amazon. I'm not much of a poet, but I do enjoy poetry. Michael Laron introduced me to a whole new world of 21st century poetry, and his Indie Poet blog series is awesome. Indie Poet Rockstar is a great resource for anyone looking towards writing and publishing poetry. Laron knows his business. This book was crammed full of information that will benefit any writer, poet, or otherwise. It is a must-read for anyone pursuing poetry. The section on MFA programs is especially insightful and extra interesting to me, as I recently learned that there is at least one school creating an MFA program similar to what Laron describes as being the future. If you are a poet and you're thinking about publishing, pick this book up. It is a great primer on business of poetry and how to turn off your passion into something you can actually make you money. Actually, interestingly enough, I just found out a few minutes ago while I was getting links for this episode that Michael has actually now released a box set with Indie Poet Rockstar and a second book on how to format and put together poetry in an ebook. So I will make sure to put a link to that in the show notes also. It's the Indie Poet Power Pack is what it's called, and you should definitely check it out if you're interested in publishing poetry. Michael knows his stuff, and definitely head over to michaellaron.com and see his blog posts there. Number 3, Take Off Your Pants, Outline Your Book for Faster, Better Writing by Libby Hawker. In addition to being one of the most clever titles of all time, Libby Hawker's Take Off Your Pants is a great book on the whys and hows of outlining. Now, the how part is a pretty basic primer. You're not going to get a ton of new information on outlining here, but Libby is a great writer with a great voice, and her other writing book is Gotta Read It. It's another must-read for authors. It's about how to do book descriptions and summaries and query letters. You definitely need to read that, whether you're indie publishing or traditional, because that information applies to your product description on Amazon if you're an indie publisher, and your query letter if you're trying to pursue a traditional publishing career. Now, that book's been around for a while, so if you haven't read it yet, you should stop wasting your time listening to me and go and read it. Ultimately, there are a ton of good books on writing better and faster out there. I've read several this year alone, including Write Better Faster by Monica Leonelle and 5,000 Words Per Hour, Write Faster, Write Smarter by Chris Fox. Of course, that doesn't even mention Rachel Aaron's 2K to 10K, which is probably considered the textbook on writing faster by most indie authors. All of these books are good, and each one of them has a different twist on the information. I would suggest reading them all and letting the information sink in. The more different sources you get on this stuff, guys, the more it gets into your brain. Take Off Your Pants just happens to have, in my opinion, the best title. Number 2, Shoot Your Novel, Cinematic Techniques to Supercharge Your Writing by C.S. Locken. Show, don't tell is the useless advice no one can afford to ignore. The problem with show, don't tell as advice is A, it isn't always true, and B, it doesn't even explain itself. Like so many other conventions in writing, show, don't tell is one of those magic mantras that authors have been spouting when they don't really care enough to give new writers advice. Shoot Your Novel fixes that problem. Lakin talks about how to write like you're the cinematographer for a movie. You have to make sure the camera, in this case your words, is showing and conveying what the story needs them to convey. It gets you to the very heart of show, don't tell, which is making sure you get the reader gets drawn into the story you're writing. Which, by the way, is why I prefer the much better advice, do whatever it takes to keep them reading. Also why there is a special code encrypted deep in the text of my books, with the secrets to finding Curly McDee's gold hoard. If you buy every book I write and diligently study the words carefully, you may eventually find the clues that lead you to Curly's gold. No, my friend, that was not a typo. You're on the right track. Disclaimer, there is no encrypted message in Matt's writing. And finally, number 1, The Story Grid by Shawn Coyne. Shawn Coyne calls The Story Grid a textbook for editors, and I think that's a fair assessment. This isn't just a book on plotting. It's basically a reference manual on storytelling. There's a little bit of everything here, and it goes into depth. I've read close to 100 books on plotting and structure over the course of the last few years, and Story Grid is by far the best of the bunch. The only downside to this book is how thick it is. The information can be overwhelming. I've had to admit that I've read through the book a few times, probably closer to 5, and wasn't until recently that the information has started to sink in. This isn't a self-help book for authors. This isn't a how-to guide for authors. This is a reference book for editing and plotting. In fact, Shawn Coyne has so much great information on the subject that he couldn't put it all into one book, even as digital book. There is a ton more information available on his website, thestorygrid.com, mostly in the form of examples of the grid in action on different books from different genres, including now nonfiction. The information from the Story Grid is also available for free on Shawn's website, which is helpful if you are struggling with money, because as far as ebooks go, Story Grid is an expensive one. Its current price as of right now on Amazon is $7.99, and it was $9.99 back when I picked it up when it first came out. That's a crazy high price for an ebook, but one that is definitely worth paying, because the portable version, having it in your hands, having the reference guide handy no matter where you are, no matter what you're writing or working on, is just super, it just makes sense to do it. I actually have, it's the only book on my Kindle that does not get deleted when I finish reading it. I keep it handy because when I go to my writer's group, or I'm sitting in the parking lot at work, or whatever I'm working on, anything, I like to reference this book and see what I can do to make things better. So there are my top 5 books on writing for 2015 so far. I'm sure I've left some books off my list, and I'm sure it will change as I continue to read more and more books on the craft. So let me know, are there any books that you think I need to read, or are there any books that you think I should stay away from? I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can leave comments on YouTube, the website, or send me an email, contact@newwriterpodcast.com. I've been Matt Brotherton, and I'll see you next week. Thank you for listening to the New Writer Podcast. If you've enjoyed the show, please subscribe on YouTube and iTunes. We welcome reviews and appreciate your feedback. If you have questions or would like to be on the show, please email us, contact@newwriterpodcast.com. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. Have a nice night.